Well, good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Indeed, a lovely morning to you, whatever it is that you faced yesterday.
Yeah.
It's a new day, and it's a day to be hopeful.
Go for it.
Yes, indeed. Good morning and welcome. I'm Maukwe Yusuf.
Second day of the week, 24th day in the month. I'm Aya Makinde. Good morning and welcome.
Yeah, we're hoping that the fuel situation has improved in Lagos. Because that meeting where the president and the CBN governor, Minister of Finance, they spoke, about different things. And so do those kind of things eventually have impact on the economy and how the market behaves? I think sometimes it does. But who knows? Who knows? Because, of course, that several people will be waiting to see. Okay, so that's been announced. Let's see what's going on in the markets. Let's have a sneak peek. What do we expect? How do we position ourselves? How do we plan? What do we do? What do we put in place? So, well, of course, as optimistic as can be. But we'll be talking to some experts this morning to see how all of these things may likely play out in the economy. Because we know we have do we call it a race against time to ensure we stabilize the Forex markets? But I know that our sector will play a very key role, and I'd like to see a lot of focus in that regard to ensure that if it's stable, if it's uninterrupted, oh goodness, you can imagine the kind of advantage it will give to the economy. Just imagine it. That's how possible it can be.
Indeed. I mean, really, when you think about it, even on your personal life, the days that, or in your within your personal space, the days that electricity is constant and the peace of mind that you have within those number of days, versus when it is erratic and you start to worry about your food in the freezer, or you're worried about the fact that the weather is so hot. Oh my God, I need to get petrol in my gen or diesel in my gen, as the case whatever it is you're using. Whether this inverter, for those who are on inverters, is the sun hot enough outside to heat this
People on everything these days. Inverter, gas, generator.
Every single thing, because electricity is power. I mean, literally. And people always say, when God wanted to create the earth, the first thing he did was say, let there be light. I mean, that was because energy was needed. Energy was needed to even see what it is that you're doing. So if we're able to fix electricity, we know that significantly it will have an impact on the cost of production. By that, I mean, fix electricity for businesses. When you look at how much businesses are spending on energy costs, and we know how they're rising by the minute each day, how the energy markets, because, well, we're still not refining our products. Yes, some people have gone into gas and are making investments in that area. Thankfully, it's beginning to yield fruit.
Yeah.
But even piping it to companies or, getting it to the places where it is needed is still a challenge. So we need to really think about, alternatives in investing in those areas. I think part of the things we're thinking of is pipelines, even pipelines outside of Nigeria. I think it was this Nigeria-Morocco thing we're supposed to be working on, something that's supposed to be going to Europe. But even locally, because of all the other things that people don't generally worry about when they're outside of this country. For instance, people vandalizing pipelines. Do people who vandalize them, do they know the difference between the one carrying crude oil or petrol, as the case might be, and gas? Big questions, but this is where we found ourselves. Nonetheless, we have to walk around the challenges and provide electricity first. Now, you were asking if a statement such as the one that the president made yesterday and was also given flesh to by the Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Economy, have an effect on the Forex market. And for those who are wondering why there seems to be so much fixation on the Forex market, I don't really think that the fixation is really so much on the Forex market as on the Naira market.
That kind of impact.
Exactly. The impact is really something else. By the time you start to ask if you're paid say 200,000 naira in Nigeria, the first question you ask yourself is, what can he buy? You know, when people are paid at the end of the month, can he even pay for their transport fare? Don't forget that we've removed subsidy on petrol. Can he take them home? Can he bring them back? Can he pay for school fees? Can he pay for healthcare? So I know that, you know, there's supposed to be investments in all of these areas, but are we just pumping naira into those sectors, or are we making sure that we're giving value for money? And I think that's where the problem is. What exactly is our currency currently? What value is it holding? Sadly, the benchmark that we've chosen is the dollar, and that has a lot of impact. Now, should the president's pronouncement? Ideally, it ought to, especially if what he has said is backed by some, you know, is backed by some action or backed by the fundamentals on the ground. Remember that when the current Minister of Finance was doing his screening with the Senate, he said the psychological index, I'm trying to remember if those are the words he used, but he said that the dollar should not be, or naira shouldn't be more than 750 naira to the dollar at that time. Does it still hold true today? I mean, when you look at all of the fundamentals, well, at least the federal government has acknowledged that there is an acute shortage. So what they've tried to do is to say, look, I think the Minister of Finance spoke much later and said that they're expecting $10 billion in the market. We'll see what effect it has on the Forex market today, whether it will calm the markets down, because the speculation has been so bad, the erraticness within from one day to the other has been so bad that if you even go to the black market, they're not selling. They'll tell you point blank, we're not selling. They're holding positions. The market has been so erratic. If you really, really, really need maybe a small amount, they might tell you, okay, well, we will sell to you no more than $500.
What?
Yes. So, I mean, this is where we are. But let us see what happens today. Ideally, as I said, the president's words and that of the Minister of Finance, especially since he gave some figures, even though I don't quite remember if he gave a time frame within which this $10 billion are expected, or how it's supposed to come into the market. It's unclear. I don't quite remember if he did. But let us wait and see how these words affect the fundamentals on the ground within the Nigerian, I want to say Naira, Naira market. Ayo.
Well, I think he actually indicated about weeks or months, whether or not it's more than 12 months, I guess that's another thing altogether. And those are words. And talking about words, Chamberlain, yes. When someone in the capacity of a president makes a statement, it has a reverberating, almost instant impact, depending on which environment it is speaking to. Just 4 words on May 29, and guess what happened? Fuel subsidy is gone. And then, of course, we're still battling with that one. So yes, sometimes those words carry a huge impact. However, there was something very, very strong in what the president said, and I think a number of other people who spoke at that event: collaboration. Previous governments have struggled with that. I mean, you remember when the president was saying, look, we can actually jumpstart our economy to, we can get up to 1 trillion, we can make it a $1 trillion economy within a short time. And he said it is something that can be done in collaboration or in partnership with the private sector. Now, the private sector has its rules of the game. Does the public sector have the same? Yes, the president is from the private sector and he's been in politics for quite a number of years. But do the rules of public service work in tandem with the rules of the private businesses? Go to the ports. Go to the places where people have to interface with government officials. Go to the borders. Go to the, wherever. Go to civil service offices. A good number of people will say some things don't happen unless you wet the ground in some way. So is there a system that is helping to check that, to ensure that the things that the president says or that anyone is working towards to collaborate with Nigeria to make Nigeria a better place, everyone gets the memo? There is such an instrument of public service as Servicom. How effective is Servicom to ensure that people are not taken undue advantage of? And then talking about collaboration, we've spoken about this time and again. The federal government and the states must collaborate. Gratifying to see what we've talked about here again, what is happening within the solid mineral space, where the Minister of Solid Minerals is speaking with some state governors. Some. Gratifying. However, how far will that be taken? Are we also collaborating with communities at the various levels? Collaboration is the only thing that I believe can get us to where we want to get to as far as the vision of the president is concerned. And the $10 billion that the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy mentioned, he says in a matter of weeks rather than months, because according to him, it's something in the line of sight. Please show us, dear Minister. Let's also see the same thing. Maybe there is something anyone and everyone else can do to ensure that that happens. But have we also done something about the ease of doing business indices in the country to ensure that there is no pressure for the private employees, for the private employers, for the private sector to do the needful, collaborate with government, cooperate with government to ensure that it's not just words, they're actually actionable words? Chamberlain.
Hey, okay. No worries. We'll hope that they will be able to shed some light and not heat on the matter when we delve into that subject matter when we're done with the dailies. And yes, we'll start off with Vanguard today. They focus on presidential tussle. Articles, CSU evidence not admissible. Tinubu, APC, INEC. So that is the perspective. Justice Okoro's 7-man Supreme Court panel reserves verdict on Atiku Obi's appeal. Says there's conflicting letters from CSU. So does that give you an inkling of what to expect? There are conflicting letters. Maybe they want to just go take the time and go through all of those conflicting letters. Never know. Atiku's fresh allegation has elements of crime. Justice Okoro. Why court should overlook technicalities? Atiku. Court dismisses APM case for being frivolous. PDP deluded. In for spectacular defeat at Supreme Court, says APC. So all of those fancy words, they just keep banding amongst themselves. But before I get down to what's at the bottom strip, this is above this lead story. Autonomy. State assemblies, staff begin a nationwide strike tomorrow. Yeah, it's tucked in here, but you may want to also focus on that one. Attack on Tinubu, Wike. Northern elders disown Gumi. What you do about filling the gaps? And then, is it good times now for poverty alleviation? FEC approves $5 billion annual humanitarian poverty alleviation trust fund. Yeah, $5 billion annually. Wow, so by 4 years, you know what that is. And then the kind of impact it's going to make on poverty alleviation trust fund. Okay, so look at what's at the bottom strip here. Subsidy removal, exchange rate unification. No, it's like this. Subsidy removal, exchange rate unification, that's the theme. And then we've achieved desired objectives ascribed to Tinubu. Is that the case? Do we get the same sense? Everybody can never be on the same page. But the economic figures, I guess they'll tell us if... Wait, this gives us an idea of where their head is concerning achievements of subsidy removal. What is the objective anyway in the first place? Okay. All here for you, so I'll let you take a look at that. That's Vanguard today.
Well, many key questions, really, Chamberlain. Many key questions. I think we'll leave it at that. We all can mull over the the headlines, because the key questions will be what exactly were the fundamentals they were trying to get. Is it to get how much Nigerians consume? Is it to get what the true value of the naira is? But the question is, can you determine that if the current cost of fuel is above the purchasing power of many Nigerians? So can you really say that, oh, this is the actual cost of consumption, when it is possible that people have dropped their cars as a result of the fact that they can't afford the product? Many, as I said, many questions.
Oh, yeah.
But let's take a look at what leadership has for you on the front page. They are also going with Vanguard this morning with what transpired yesterday at the Supreme Court. Supreme Court raises poses. So they too are asking questions over Chicago varsity documents, reserves judgment in Atiku Obi's appeals, dismisses APM suit, fines Smart Adeyemi 2 million naira over Kogi APC governorship ticket. Okay, the story is on page 4 of the paper. I think that's where you get all of what happened yesterday at the Supreme Court. Now you have to ask, though, does this fining of people who bring cases that perhaps the Supreme Court considers frivolous to it, does it really have an effect on, does it stop them? This is not the first time we've seen this fining. Or is it that it's not stringent enough to deter? Because when people want to wait.
It appears so. Compared to what they want to achieve, they don't consider it as an impediment. So they keep going.
Okay, page 4 is where you find details there. You have a number of other stories. Wike orders strict enforcement of tax revenue laws. I think you'll find details inside page 14 of the paper. And this one broke yesterday. I think it's something we all should share. P&ID, UK court reverses $11 billion award against Nigeria. It's a page 7 read. Federal government tackles illiquidity, grants amnesty to FX outside banking system. Story is on page 7. And you also have a number of other stories here. Israel-Hamas war, Gaza gets more aids, death toll hits 6,400 in a totally avoidable war.
Yeah.
6,400 lives lost. Well, we'll leave it there for leadership news.
The Guardian newspaper this morning is drilling down to the communities in its lead story, and it is talking about the Petroleum Industry Act. Look at it. Host communities kick as proposed PIA review shrinks 3% allocation. Now, of course, you can see that the shrink is in parentheses. Find out what that means on page 6, but the cue there, right beside the pictures, host communities must fund new portal introduced by NUPRIC and hire, pay lawyers and chartered accountants with at least 10 years experience. Well, the details you'll find on page 6 of the paper this morning. That's P&ID story is also right there on the front page. P&ID $11 billion award against Nigeria obtained by fraud. Tinubu hails victory. And so many other stories you'll find interesting. Choose your pick. That's the Guardian newspaper this morning.
Take a look at this Nigeria Supreme Court, the waiting game. Apex Court reserves judgment in Atiku Obi's appeal against Tinubu, dismisses APM suit, PDP in for another round of fruitless exercise, says APC. Applicants abandon over 3,000 international passports in Kwara, NIS controller. So what's going on? They change their mind about, who knows what's going on there. And then you see this at the bottom strip. Lifeline as UK court dismisses $11 billion P&ID suit against Nigeria. FG describes verdict as victory over corruption, indictment of predatory international investors. So you can get all of that here this Nigeria.
Okay, New Telegraph is what I'm going to look at for you. And then you see this PNID. UK court quashes $11 billion fine slammed on Nigeria. Clears former Lagos Attorney General Shashore of bribery charges. Ruling proves state won't be held hostage by private firms, corrupt officials, conspiracies. That's according to Tinubu. It saves federal government $11 billion. There's Fagbemi, stories on page 2 of the paper. You also have a number of other stories right here. FEC OK's $5 billion humanitarian poverty alleviation fund. Okay, approved $700 million World Bank financing for adolescent girls' education. I'm looking at New Telegraph. I hope that we have it and it pops up very soon for you. Deployment of security tech to check illegal mining. And then you also see right there, Forex, federal government creates framework to clear backlog of obligations. The story is on page 3 of the paper. Just in case you're also wondering what's happening What's happening here in the FCT? FCTA, personal income tax defaulters to spend 3 years in jail. Okay, I'm hoping that for those of us residing in the Federal Capital Territory, that we try to put our personal income tax papers in order. Page 28 is where you'll find details. Port OK suit seeking to sack new EFCC chair. So you're going to hear it. Page 7 is where you should be looking at for details. Let's leave it there for New Telegraph.
Daily Independent is talking about improving Nigeria's infrastructure stock, part of what the president mentioned yesterday. FG sets 10-year target to finance $3 trillion infrastructure stock. And look at the riders, assures of plans to improve foreign exchange liquidity, says Nigeria expects $10 billion in Forex inflows in weeks. So yeah, Maokwe, that's the answer to the question you were asking. Commences students' loan program in January 2024. The details you'll find on page 29 of the Daily Independent newspaper this morning. Right under that picture on the front page, Atiku Obi Tinubu fates hang in the balance. A Supreme Court reserves judgment on appeals, dismisses APM's appeal against Tinubu. Find the details, continue on the inside pages. Above the nameplate, Tinubu OK's Poverty Alleviation Trust Fund with $5 billion yearly. What does that mean? Find the details on the inside pages. FEC approves new draft policy to regulate solid minerals sector. Ratifies acceptance of $3.4 billion World Bank loan. I'm talking about this, Poverty Alleviation Trust Fund thing. It'll be good to know how it's going to play out, given that we're still waiting on governors to come up with that famous social register. Has it been reviewed? How far so far with the $2 billion that your state governor got? Who's asking questions? Find all of the details right there on the inside pages of the paper. Several other stories that catch your interest, if you please. Army has acquired electronic warfare capacities, according to the Chief of Army Staff, several others. That's the Daily Independent newspaper this morning.
Okay, take a look at Business Day next. UK court dismisses $11.5 billion PNID award against Nigeria. Business Day reports this morning. And then you get to see the writer. Tinubu hails verdict, says victory is for Africa. Now, it's not just all about this story here. Then this piece might interest you. Sales of banned toxic mercury-laden cosmetics shift online. So they're talking about, in spite of the fact that there's a global treaty that has banned this, so now they've shifted online. Of course, the question there will be, so do we get any sense, or do they actually exist? I mean, regulators of products you get online, and anyone just go online, start hawking or selling stuff. Who checks all of them? Because there's been several cases where people get things online and you can't trace, you can't refund. So what are the operating rules, the guidelines there? I know that we have consumer agencies and things like that, but there will always be a big question about all of those.
Yeah, things that digital economy should also be looking at, I guess.
So they need to work together. So what are the condition precedents before you just get up and set up stuff? So the same thing for media too. Not just anyone can just get an internet of 3,000 naira per week and suddenly become A, B, C, or D. Yeah. And then there's appears some sort of follow-up on that story. Just beneath that one, you get to see investigation, deadly trade too. Nigeria's organic skincare industry hides a toxic secret. What could it be? So, you know, this kind of things come in very subtle, things you least expect, and then they creep in on you. And before you know what's going on, you have this huge effect that's, in some cases, who knows the kind of damage. Irreparable in some sense, but, you know, just be cautious out there, everyone. That's business day today. Which one you got?
I want to believe that we've run through almost all, if not all, of the dailies. This beautiful.
How about this one?
Okay, let's take a look at Daily Trust for you then. Federal government automates Forex transactions as Naira slumps to 1,002. You haven't taken this one?
I'm not sure. Have we?
Because I know how much you've been looking at this Naira markets. But hey, not a laughing matter. When you look at the figure I'm looking at here,
look at that.
Certainly not something to laugh at. Federal government automates Forex transactions as Naira slumps to 1,220 Naira to the dollar. Admits illiquidity, pledges to clear Forex backlog. Come up with critical reforms, NESG urges government. Help manufacturers with subsidy. That's according to Don. I'm not certain if it's a University Don or page 4 will give you details. You also see at the bottom there, Gaza war, obey international law, Western leaders tell Israel. Story is right there. The picture is certainly worth more than 1,000 words. Look at a number of other stories here. Bandits evade Katsina community, kill 9, abduct 7. Nigeria wins $11 billion debt case against PNID. And they also have that story. Supreme Court reserves judgment in Atiku Obi's appeals against Tinubu APM withdraws. So, I think that we can leave it here for Daily Trust newspapers.
Okay, right. So there you go. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly take a look at the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. The Nigerian News Direct this morning. Nigerian News Direct leads with CSU certificate. Technicalities stall admission of Atiku's evidence in Supreme Court. That's the lead of the paper. INEC, APC, Tinubu plead with court to classify Atiku's evidence as inadmissible, statute barred. The details you find on the inside pages, and there's a couple of other writers. Supreme Court reserves judgment in Obi Atiku's appeal. APM withdraws appeal against Tinubu. That story is also on page 4 of the paper this morning. And a good number of other stories you'll find on the front page, including Borno governor reopens Monday market, waives 2 years rent for 8,000 traders. That's amazing. Right above that one, Loma seals Alaba International trade fair market for breaching environmental laws. Now, how's that for size? Quick look at the Daily Times newspaper today. The Daily Times newspaper leads with the PNID case. And the angle is interesting. Look at it. Buhari, Malami, Nigeria win. But that's their angle to it, so it's not me, you can see. So, after over 5 years, Commercial Courts of England and Wales delivers verdicts. The details you find on the inside pages of the paper. At the bottom of the page, an interesting one. Adeleke suspends foreign trips by government officials as the governor of Osun State. If you had those plans, well, now you know. Several other stories on the front page. Crisis rocks FMC Asaba over interns. What does that mean? The details you'll find on the inside pages. And the issue hasn't died down. I'm talking about what's happening as the consequence of water release from Onyo Dam. That's what the picture on the front page is about. It's an aerial view of effect of excess water release from Onyo Dam in some parts of Lagos State and Ogun. The dam is managed by Ogun Osun River Basin Authority. That's the front page of the Daily Times newspaper this morning, as well as a look at some of the dailies. We're back right after now, as we hinted at earlier, to take on the issues as they come. Just stay with us.
The National Economic Summit, a yearly gathering of government representatives and high-level private sector leaders, is on again for the 29th edition. It's a platform to dialogue on Nigeria's economic management. This year's edition, with the theme, Pathways to Sustainable Economic Transformation and Inclusion, comes at a time the nation grapples with numerous challenges and the need for urgent reforms. Representatives of the National Economic Summit Group highlight necessary steps to kickstart Nigeria's journey to economic transformation.
A macroeconomic stabilization program supported by an aggressively scaled national security effort to halt all forms of syndicated and organized crime around crude oil and solid minerals.
Without a willing government at the center of the events, this will not be possible. Today, Mr. President, you sit at the helm of affairs as a willing reformer, sir, and we believe that our nation can get to a $4 trillion economy by the year 2035.
The event was declared open by President Bola Tinubu, who acknowledged the economic challenges currently faced by Nigerians. He outlines the plans by his administration to bring a solution to these challenges.
Consistent with our commitment to enshrine fairness and the rule of law in our country, this government will uphold the sanctity of every legitimate contract, specifically as it relates to foreign exchange obligations of the government. All the forward contracts that the government has entered into will be honored. The framework has been put in place to ensure that these obligations are met in due course. My government is not blind to the challenges several of you are facing in the financial markets. I can only allay these concerns by revealing that we have a good line of sight for the additional foreign exchange liquidity that is required to restore market confidence. And we are going to do that. I would like to charge you, the captains of industry here present, to commit yourself and redouble your effort to our vision of a renewed hope.
Relatedly, the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Atiku Bagudu, says the ministry has commenced the process of the review of the National Development Plan.
We are faithfully committed to the implementation of plans, including the Agenda 2050, because it is an irreducible minimum of commitment to some consensus by all, especially in a federal setup like Nigeria, which you have always believed, but which you have always led that should be recognized as such.
A panel session follows where speakers deliberate on issues like foreign exchange, government's plan for investment and growth, food security, amongst others. The National Economic Summit, organized in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning, through impactful dialogue, seeks to inspire confidence in the Nigerian economy to drive job creation and fulfill Nigeria's economic potential on the global stage. Victoria Longjohn for Channels Television News.
Yeah, welcome back. So that is what we're focusing on. We're starting with here today on Sunrise Daily. And those two gentlemen are here with us in the studio. Dr. Fashua, Special Advisor to the President on Economic Affairs, Office of the Vice President, Economist, and also Bongo Adi, Professor of Economics at Lagos Business School and Chairman, Editorial Subcommittee of Nigeria NES 29. That's Nigeria Economic Summit 29. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Thanks for having me.
Well, Prof, several narratives have come through already from the NESG, and rightly so, as a result of the persons who spoke yesterday. And then, of course, several thoughts in the minds of the people, businesses, several people wondering, okay, where is this headed? What do we do? It might be early days yet because NESG is still going on. So what can you tell us that at the end of the day, because, this is crucial. NESG coming up at this time has always been important, but this time we know the situation with the economy. So many will be looking to the NESG and all of those who are attending for some sort of direction. So what would you tell us that, look, what are you trying to achieve? What should we expect from the summit this time?
Well, the summit has become an institutionalized annual event for the Nigerian economy, which is a public-private sector dialogue on economy, foster sustainable, economic, social development. So, to that respect, that's a very great achievement so far. So, in this particular summit, it's coming at a very auspicious time, in the sense that we are in a very critical period. We call it an inflection point. So we've had the first administration, and this is the first summit for the new administration, and an opportunity for them actually to, well, let me use that balance, to market themselves to not just the private sector audience, the corporate players, but also the nation and in global community, because you have all the big investment banks attending the summit. So they were listening to the sound bites. So this is, about setting the agenda, the real agenda, economic agenda for the administration. It's not that the economic summit is about to do that, but to collect the views and what people think should be done to get the economy moving, both in the immediate, short and long term. So that's what the summit is all about, and I think it's all taken off on a very good note. So the president's speech yesterday actually struck the right notes, and you could get that from the applause that he got. But, listening to people who came to the summit, because we are still compiling the reports, at the end of the day, we're going to come out with a green book, which will be, the NESG's contribution to the government in terms of policy, direction, and all of that, the key policy anchors that will kickstart the economy. Because the challenge that we have right now is that of productivity. So the president actually, picked off the right points.
But then when his key ministers came to speak, I mean, I'm speaking from what I heard from the audience. So most people were not really confident that really, you know, they couldn't find that complementarity between what the president said and what the key ministers, you know, because the president, you know, was very, you could see that there is that ambitious target to grow an economy of 4 trillion in 4 years, or even 5 trillion in 4 years. So $1 trillion per year. That is massive. And then next thing you need to ask is, where are we? And then what are the necessary, drivers that will get us there? Because that's what people wanted to hear. So you want to get 10 million Nigerians out of poverty each year, or something like that, and then you want to grow the economy by double digits. So you want to know what monetary policy is going to look like, and that's what people expected to hear from the central bank governor. So, but I'm not sure that soundbite came the way people wanted it, and a lot of people were asking, questions. So, but at the end of the day, the important thing is that people know. A lot of our views regarding what needs to be done and how government should sequence policies, are coming up. So we'll see how that goes at the end of the day.
Well, Mr. Fashaw, almost like football, everybody's a coach. So we all know what to do. But in this case, too, it's a typology because everybody feels the crunch with the economy, whichever way you look at it. So connecting the dots in terms of what the president's policy thrust, his mindset, where his head is, and then his lieutenants in terms of how they key in.
Very interesting. And I think I was there for most of the day yesterday as well. The president came with very bold, ambitious goals. And I think it's actually shifting the goals to the right further, even beyond the campaigns. Because, part of the campaign was $1 trillion economy by 2026 or thereabout. And he's saying that, look, we can even do better than that, And the idea of $3 trillion economy in 10 years, he's saying that, look, we can take it to 4 trillion. And those are very, very ambitious goals anyway. So, and I think that now, and that's what it takes to be a leader. And one of the key things in leadership is visioning and risk-taking in calculated manner. Those are the things that separate leadership from just being a manager. So his lieutenants, too. I was in a session on the Congress between the fiscal and monetary policy at which the new central bank governor was there. And, of course, yesterday was his first outing since he became the central bank governor, as he said, And he also actually got bitten by the bug because he was telling us that in his regime, number one, clear separation of duties, that what they don't need to be doing in central bank, they will not do it, they won't touch it. However, that they're going to guard their own territory also very jealously in terms of, wrestling down inflation. He's all about wrestling down inflation. But he said something that was also very, very interesting. He said that, the idea that in the foreign exchange market, what they're coming up with, that everybody will be clear about the rules of that market. There won't be an amorphous thing where anybody just plays. And I think what I got from that was, that in time and very soon also, the black market, which people try to call parallel market, and when you call it parallel market, it suggests a market that's at par with the official market. We know what challenges are taking a lot of people to the black market, but still, like the Minister of Finance said yesterday, and coordinating minister for the economy, Mr. Wale Edun, he said, what's going on is a case of the tail wagging the dog. And I've also said that quite a while, for so many times as well. The tail wagging the dog, the black market dictating where everybody else goes to. So if somebody goes on internet now or goes on Twitter or something and say, oh, the rate of the Naira is so. It's like when they used to have open outcry in the stock market. And someone is speaking to his mom, and he said, yes, can you put that cell, that battery cell somewhere? And someone is listening to him. He said, cell? Whether it's battery cell or cell, everybody goes sell. And in the same manner, someone says, look, I'm about to buy something for you on my way back from work. So buy. And that's how, you can drive the market in any direction that you like. So the Minister of Finance said, what they're looking at is a case where the tail will stop wagging the dog. So all that's going on now, I believe that also what the president said, and as a quote by the finance minister, they're expecting some good inflows of almost $10 billion in the next few, he said, in a matter of weeks, not months. And I heard them say something about sovereign wealth funds that they're speaking to, some foreign portfolio investors who are also willing to come. We know that those guys are hot money anyway. You know, and they're also talking about crude oil. So they said between crude oil proceeds, sovereign wealth funds, and I'm happy to hear that. You know, if you're talking to a Norway sovereign wealth fund, depending on the kind of deal you're working with them, Norway, Qatar, you know, UAE, Saudi Arabia, those guys are swimming in money. So if you can give them a template to show that, look, whatever you're bringing in, you're going to get it back quickly. You're going to get it back when you want, with good returns and so on. It solves a problem for us. We have liquidity in the market. And, you know, but as Professor Bongo has said, the key issue is also still productivity. Yeah. No matter how much money you're bringing, if it has to dovetail into productivity in the Nigerian market. And I probably will close by this, dovetailing into productivity for every Nigerian. So that we need to, what we call, you know, economic complexity, adding value to what we produce. But the president also mentioned those cottage industries they've talked about. He also mentioned mega cities in 6 geopolitics. I mean, but again, that's the role of leadership, you know, and I think that it was a fantastic speech, and everybody is having to align behind that speech this morning.
But part of what Prof said in terms of connecting those dots, yes, the hot monies, the portfolio investors, all of those, they'll have their role, but part of what you also highlighted in conclusion there is what we can refer to as the boots on the ground, investing here, having those manufacturing sector up and running here. That is going to be key because, yes, we can get all the dollar inflow here, but let's not also forget, have we been able to, because do we get the sense there at that summit, have we been able to plug those loopholes? I know the CBN says the rules will be there. Does it mean there'll be no more round tripping? We won't have all people just
That's what he said.
Those are challenges that we need to be sure that...
That's what he said. You know, the nitty-gritty of how they do that is what they're going to roll. And in fact, the CBN governor said in that other meeting, you know, which was a breakout, that there's going to be an eloquent document. That's what he said. He said the one eloquent document is going to come out of the central bank that's going to lay the rules and, you know, and then, of course, sanctions are going to come. Anything like round tripping. He said, look, if you're legit, you probably won't have much to worry about. But if you are not legit, you have to worry a lot. And these guys are determined, yeah. Some will tell you that Mr. Cardoso, at 6'6" or thereabout, you know, is more like a headmaster. You know, he's a no-nonsense person. And I think, given the lessons of the recent past, you know, the delving of central bank into maybe too much of development financing and so on, almost every aspect of the economy, I think he has that advantage, that push, that impetus to act properly. You know, I'm very glad, but again, like you said, issue of productivity, our import-export profile, which I probably, if I have some time, we'll talk about later, is very, very skewed in terms of import. Taiwo Idede was also in one of the committees, and he said that what they're doing regarding the 43 items, which has been quite worrisome, okay, you removed that ban, which wasn't a ban really, but it wasn't central bank's role to do that, as they said, as they repeated yesterday. But Taiwo Idede said that working on a committee, they're looking at 1,200 items under the HS code of the custom. That's the harmonized, whatever code of the custom, to say that, you know, they need a comprehensive review to say each line-by-line item, 1,200 different items imported into Nigeria, they're looking at it, is this rate right? Should we increase the tariff or reduce the tariff? If it's an input for our industries, do we need to put much tariff on them? No, we don't. And I was very glad that at least they're doing that, but it's going to be a gradual process.
Well, I've been looking at Mr. Bongo, you've nodded to some of the things he said, and you've been quiet with some. So while it is that, yes, he's talked about the vision of the president, you did say that some of the things that the lieutenant did say didn't quite give the same level of confidence which you heard the president put out there. But I'm wondering whether, you know, I mean, you guys are the experts. Your people work in both the private sector and even in government. So when the president speaks, he's not just speaking, he cannot be speaking in a vacuum. He's not speaking abstract. A number of people will say they're looking to the fundamentals one of the key fundamentals, and I think for a number of people that has really shaken our markets, is our Forex reserves. We've seen what big scandal, has come out of some revelations from, I'm trying to remember the company now.
JP Morgan.
JP Morgan, yeah. And we know how that has affected, perception and even speculation against the Naira, against our own currency. So for you, looking at this, some people will say maybe that's why, maybe the lieutenants were speaking with some more cautious optimism, not wanting to promise so much. But for you, I mean, when you listen to the president speak and listen to his lieutenant speak and look at the fundamentals on the ground, do you have faith that indeed what the president is saying is possible?
Yes. Okay, so I will also want to, underscore the source of my confidence. When I say yes, I have confidence in what is President said in terms of the ability to really, walk the talk. Yes, we have three challenges in the economy right now. So whether it's exchange rate or inflation or even interest rates. So those are the core pillars of the central bank. Right. So when you look at this, it doesn't really, inspire any sort of investor confidence. And that's just the fact. And some of the speakers yesterday also alluded to that. Now we have some real issues here. Let's take infrastructure, for instance, electricity. We've got capacity in generation of up to 17,000 megawatts. But the evacuation capability that we have as today, not up to 7,000. So we still have massive electricity trapped within our system that the transmission network is not able to carry to people's homes. Now, that's a big issue, not just people's homes, even for industries. Now, that's a minor thing. We already got the generation. So some people will be interested in hearing, okay, what sort of things do we need to do to ensure that so those low-hanging fruits are optimized? Because that is what we begin to set the fundamentals that you're talking about, okay? So you now see this rampage in inflation every day. So, what people expected to hear, what are the necessary things that need to happen today, okay? So that you don't wake up in the morning and you hear that the dollar is now 1,500 naira, and then the next day, and the way the exchange rate is going, that's the same way inflation is following. So we don't have price stability. An investor will be looking at all of these things and then think, okay, if I come in at this price, when I'm exiting, at what price am I exiting? And then that is actually what. And then we look at the global, from what my friend Dr. Tope said here now. If you look at the global market, you see that there is, in fact, is in the green, meaning that the U.S. market has recovered. But sometime 4 months ago, 6 months ago, people were actually predicting recession, but it didn't happen. When we had the yield curve that was reversing, but everything has actually been set right now. So you can see that the global economy is moving, strongly, especially in the United States. So investors will be looking for such, safe havens to put their money. Now, with our situation here where we have this sort of inflation, instability in prices, unpredictability, who will be willing to come in? Because there is real competition for capital. I like what he said about Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Norwegian sovereign wealth funds. Well, we don't know what that template is that the present government, the cabinet members or the key functionaries we give to these people to boost their confidence to bring money here, because that is exactly what we need. Yeah, I agree that having 10 billion come in a couple of weeks, we somehow ease, the constraint that we have in the supply side, the Forex market currently, which will actually help a whole lot of things. But it's also important for us to know what are the mechanisms around that $10 billion. Is that going to be a fresh borrowing? Because we have some issues. Now, some of the vibes that some people had expected to see got this debt of this size, which is hurting us massively. Okay? So what are the, the things that we needed to do now to begin to manage those debts? So, but I'm sure that those will be in the larger blueprint that will be released.
Does the president's commitment, that statement about them determined to clear the backlog, does it answer some of those questions?
Of course it does, but again, that's a statement.
It's a statement. Well, Mr. Fashaw, I also noticed that when he was speaking about production, I saw you nod very vigorously about the fact that we need to go back to productivity. And I imagine by extension to production. What exactly is government's plan in this direction? Because some people will say they're not seeing government being aggressive enough in supporting producers, in supporting manufacturers, in driving cottage industries, the places where production can really, really happen. What exactly is government's plan here?
Oh, well, again, a lot of that came out yesterday, and I wanted to quickly comment on the issue of, revenue and for example, the debt, one of the things that can begin to solve our problem, because all these problems are not going to disappear overnight anyway. And remember that every country does have these issues that they're dealing with. That's why you have government in the first place, and every country has a government. So one of the things that will begin to reduce this burden from this debt is to drive revenue. I happen to be also in the fiscal committee and tax committee, and already we've seen that without actually increasing taxes at all, most of, let's say 50% of the revenues of this country, I won't use tax because tax is just a subset, go into people's pockets. 50% or more of taxes or revenue, rent, rates, fees, fines, whatever that is due to government across the board, national, subnational, go into people's pockets because of several, infractions and indiscipline and what have you. If you can block that, you probably will be taking, maybe the FRS will close this year around 14, 15 trillion.
Are you talking about, okay, because you just said FRS, I imagine that's at the federal level.
That's just for the federal.
So
the states, look at what FCT is doing.
Yeah.
When Mr. Wike got into government, and he said, listen, he looked in the books and said, nobody is paying ground rent in this FCT. And all of these mansions everywhere. And the guy said, listen, pay me my money or I seal you or something, or I revoke it. Everybody was clambering over themselves to pay. And the man is going to be tripling his revenue this year, whether they like it or not. And of course, the vice president also charged the governors in the last NEC meeting. They said, listen, look at what this man is doing. Go back to your states and also see what you can do in all of your GRAs where your friends are living. See what you can do to ensure you get something back from people. But that's as far as the revenue is concerned.
This is in spite of the introduction of a Treasury single account.
Yes.
Where
absolutely.
all of government's revenue was supposed to have been paid
trust me, that, I mean, if you need to pay a tax of 10 million, and I go to you and say, you know what, Makwe, give me 2 million, and give me another 2 million for myself. Pay that 2 million there. I'm going to do it for you. And you pay 2 million officially to government, or 1 million, or even 500, or nothing. And you give me the cash. And that's what's going on in almost every situation in this country, national, subnational. It's a joke. And we're saying that if you can use technology and intelligence and also use carrot and stick and show some people, to the goal of serious fines, everybody will sit up. That's all we need. We don't need to increase taxes. And I think that's what we've been working on, so far. So to answer your question about what the government is supporting industries, remember that the campaign document of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu actually spoke about cottage industries in 6 geopolitical zones of this country that will be driven around the products of those places. For example, you go to Benue State, part of Kogi State, part of Niger State, the amount of wastage, in season, post-harvest losses, huge. So what you want to do is maybe cite fruit juice companies in those places to actually quickly use. I remember in 2013, I was in Uganda, and I saw that the students of Makerere University, they built a mobile fruit processing machine and put it behind a truck, and they were driving from village to village, helping them to process those things into fruit juice. I don't know whether those guys can take it to the market, and I think we need some of those kind of things. So yesterday, the president also mentioned some of these things. He said that, he believes that we should be able to build mega cities and in 6 geopolitical zones under 10 years. He said we should be able to have fully networked rail, gas, fiber optics, and roads, cities in 20 years rather than 300 years. That we should be able to finance our infrastructure, $3 trillion worth in 10 years with the private sector collaboration rather than wait for 300 years. And of course, he also mentioned the issue of those industrialization plan of the country and of the government. Now, again, his ambitions are way out. And look, but that's the kind of thing that a Lee Kuan Yew would do in Singapore. We used to be a trading outpost, a fishing village and all of that, but hey, I have a dream. That yesterday was, for me, almost an I have a dream. And like I said earlier, see, sometimes the role of we who are the aides and minions is to align behind some of these and also check what we're doing and say, hey, are we feeding the dream and actualizing the dream of this wonderful visionary that's ahead of us? It was a shock. And many of those things were said extempore. A lot of them were not on the speech, because I was watching, when he was speaking, he took his eyes off whatever prompter and all of that, and I was speaking from the heart. And again, he's also informed by the work that they are doing himself, the Central Bank Governor, the Minister of Finance, talking to big financiers around the world. It's an approach. Okay. It's a bit scary, it's an approach, but I think it's doable.
Well, yeah, we'll also talk about how they want to achieve this dream. We'll look at the current figures, the current economic realities compared, and then probably, are they leveraging on that? Is that an indication of where we're going to be headed? So all of that we'll talk about when we return in just a moment. Stay on with us.
Southwood. Fine furnishings for your home and office. Southwood is a Nigerian company dedicated to improving the quality of workplaces and homes. Our space planning and craftsmanship allows you to create a highly customized and comfortable office environment for hardworking and busy executives. Southwood solutions are perfect for today's flexible work cultures. Teamwork, transparency, collaboration. A well-designed and comfortable work environment is proven to increase productivity and morale. Our elegant home furnishings provide the ultimate in comfort and quality. Southwood, furnishings that shape your world. Visit us today at southwoodnigeria.com. Email us at furniture@southwoodnigeria.com or call 0700-FURNITURE.
Discover Lipton's flavorful and balanced taste. We pick fine quality tea leaves from selected tea gardens around the world to give you Lipton Yellow Label's flavorful and balanced taste in every sip.
When you sweat, you lose ions too. Reach for Pocari Sweat, similar to your body fluid. It is easily absorbed and rehydrates you faster. Replenish your ions with Pocari Sweat Iron Supply Drink.
Hey, big papa. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you. Sit down. How you doing now?
They can't pay.
I bring your medicine.
Thank you.
Papa, where Miko?
Miko don't work. Miko don't join our business.
Oil business?
Yes, sir.
Which company? Papa, Miko don't they follow them go cook oil? That's illegal.
Small, yeah. No,
it's a crime. That kind of business no good for Miko at all. It is illegal and very dangerous.
What happened?
Wow. Papa, na fire for where we dey cook oil. Who just hear sound from nowhere?
My country people, Palava will bungle an illegal refinery. refinery dey cost for we community, e too plenty. Our pikin dem we get better future don dey peme. On top, we dey carry our own hand, spoil we land and water. Abeg you, no follow the do or sponsor this kind of business. Now Pipeline Infrastructure Nigeria Limited and NNPCL say make we tell you now.
Southwood. Fine furnishings for your home and office. Southwood is a Nigerian company dedicated to improving the quality of workplaces and homes. Our space planning and craftsmanship allows you to create a highly customized and comfortable office environment for hardworking and busy executives. Southwood solutions are perfect for today's flexible work cultures. Teamwork, transparency, collaboration. A well-designed and comfortable work environment is proven to increase productivity and morale. Our elegant home furnishings provide the ultimate in comfort and quality. Southwood, furnishings that shape your world. Visit us today at southwoodnigeria.com. Email us at furniture@southwoodnigeria.com or call 0700 Furniture.
Thank you for staying with us. We're still having conversations with a focus on Nigeria's economy with Dr. Tokwe Fasho and Professor Bongo Ade in our Abuja studio. Prof, let me start with you. Good to see you again. But, you know, my focus, you know, perhaps for you to, you know, give some perspectives to is on the president's words by working closely with all of you in the private sector. Collaboration, essentially. Given the lamentations of some associations or bodies in the OPS, the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, for instance, crying about a number of things, just lamenting about situations that some of their people have to go through, ease of doing business and those challenges. How significant is this statement of the president saying, without collaboration, it may not be possible? What are the hurdles in the way of collaboration between the government and the private sector to achieving this $1 trillion Nigerian economy that the president mentioned?
Of course, collaboration is key because without it, it's not possible to even achieve a $1 economy, not to talk of a $1 trillion economy. And the president, I think, he is the first to give to the private sector, you know, so what it is that they always want, which is to, in fact, even for the president to appear for the summit, you know, is itself an achievement because I know that in the past, it's always a struggle to get the president in the first year to attend the summit, but he was able to make it. So that is itself an assurance, you know, that has given to the private sector that is willing to collaborate, is willing to work with them. So collaboration is the engine, actually, when you talk about building the economy. Collaboration between the public sector and the private sector needs to happen. These days, you know, but the thing where I have some issues here is that like my friend Dr. Tokwe said here, that the president shifted it further to the right in terms of his ambitious goals. And I like that. If you look at the leading economies today, even in the United States, so yes, I am a pro-market economist in the sense that I like the beauty of the market. I like, you know, the price discovery and all of those, you know, efficiency gains that we achieve when we allow the market to really coordinate things. But at the same time, you notice that for economies, especially when an economy is trapped in a low-level productivity, low-level equilibrium, it is important for government to take the center stage, which is, you know, what is said to, you know, government needs to identify the key sectors and then move in those directions, allocate resources in such a way they create the necessary incentives regarding what they want to achieve in the economy. So the leading technologies we have today, the disruptive technologies that so many firms, such as Apple, are using to build their global brand and make so much money all over the globe, those are technologies sponsored by public investment in the United States. Whether you are talking about the touchscreen, mechanism that you have on phones and on TVs and everything, all these were government-sponsored, or GPS. It was the American government, not the private sector, that led those, moves, in those days, immediately after the Second World War. And then there is this lady, The Mission Economy, written by Mariana Mazzucato, one of the leading thinkers in that direction. So the mission economy, in fact, what the president gave was an ambitious mission, where the direction he wants to take the economy, where he wants the economy to be. And that is very, very key. The public sector still needs to direct the economic growth, economic development. All right. So without that, it is not possible even for the private sector, because even given the structure of our economy, you realize that government still controls a whole lot of things. More, capital, maybe 65%. I was speaking to one of my students who was also at the summit yesterday. So he was telling me about how he had to shift his business. So he said that when it comes to demand, the demand that comes from the public sector is still very huge. And if you are not serving the public sector in Nigeria, you probably will just be making, marginal gains or marginal returns. So you see that it is necessary for government to take that commanding height of the economy, right? But again, when that happened in the past, but it was maybe misguided, misdirected, and eventually we ended up, the way where we are now. But I think it is something that this administration needs to, that balance.
But Prof,
having government,
if you can hear me, Prof,
the
perhaps
pace,
by way of
control certain things. So
making an effort. My apologies. Perhaps by way of making an effort to be a little clearer for people to understand. I'm asking what the hurdles are in the way of, what the president said. You are aware that in the previous administration, they made a big noise, a big deal of what they call the ease of doing business parameters for in the country. Now, is that part of what the government is talking about here now? Is ease of doing business part of the hurdles that needs to get out of the way, that we need to tinker with, so that the private sector can adequately and profitably, progressively and sustainably collaborate with government in this new I have a dream statement, according to Dr. Fashua?
Well, ease of doing business has always been there. And I don't think that it is the sole responsibility of the federal system. The states also have the subnationals have their own roles to play. So, and then sometimes you have some kind of conflict. There was a question that came up at the summit yesterday. In conclusion, somebody from Kogi State asked a question regarding the right of way. So, somebody said that, okay, because big companies will bring fiber optics, which has enormous economic benefits in terms of productivity enhancement and all of that. And because of that, states need to, be very flexible in giving them the right of way, and then it shouldn't be taking a long time and then going into very arduous processes. Now, the person asks, but if those rights of ways will be provided at no cost, but those resources that are given actually come at a price to those communities, how do you compensate the communities for all of this? So you can see the way that, the subnationals also relate with all these things.
Okay.
So it's not just about the federal. I think the subnationals also have to think about that when it comes to ease of doing business. But it is not... I don't think it's going to be that easy, because we have had that all the years, starting from the Obasanjo regime through the Jonathan era, through the Buhari. So we've had the presidential ease of doing business, system. But then has the ease of doing business really improved? So what I would be expecting to hear from the government or see them do are the critical steps, that needs to be taken to improve the ease of business that businesses keep complaining about year in, year out.
Good. Which is exactly the question to ask him now. Which is exactly the question to ask him, Prof. So, Dr. Fashua, I speak to that. Thankfully, the previous administration, you know, this whole shebang about the presidential enabling business environment committee, you know, was a product under the office of the vice president where you operate now. For you, what are the hurdles to cross? What are the challenges to contend with if we are to get the collaboration right? As I've always said, the federal government has citizens, but the indigents and the residents are in the states, and that is where they feel the pinch. So if we do not have that collaboration between the federal and the state governments, all 36 of them, including the federal capital territory, it's a pipe dream, and it will never see the light of day. What do you think? So how do we cross that hurdle?
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much. You are very right. And as Professor Adi had said also, already the metrics have drilled down to the states. You know, the metrics have drilled down to the states, and each of them have their ratings in terms of how well. In fact, I think I saw something recently. I think, surprisingly, either Kebbi or Kwara, one of them was the best in terms of ease of doing business on a subnational level. However, you know where I'm coming from. I've also written in times past in terms of critiquing the metrics of the ease of doing business. And, you know, some of them, I believe, are a little bit tangential to our system here. For example, out of the 10, the World Bank, this is driven by the World Bank, out of the 10 metrics that are measured, 2 or 3, 4 of them, you know, they're about, I think, a bit tangential. For example, the measures ease of declaring bankruptcy, for example. You know, the Americans, they have Chapter 9 and all of Chapter 11, all of those things. They are very quick to opt out sometimes and start again. Someone like Donald Trump had declared bankruptcy 4 times. He still became the president of the United States. You know, but here it's different. Now, as a growing economy, I cannot even be considered to be an emerging yet. If you say we're emerging, we're just kind of, you know, hyping ourselves, really. What we need is not to have people who come in and then the next year they're trying to declare bankruptcy, you know, or, you know, some other ones that are ease of cross-border business. Now, very few businesses do cross-border businesses. So why are we putting so much weight on cross-border businesses, for example, and so on and so forth? So I advocated that we should probably also develop a Nigeria-centric ease of doing business. For example, a small company can start a business, okay? Opening your company is not a big deal anywhere in the world anymore, including in Nigeria. Getting registered in Corporate Affairs Commission, you can get that done in 1 day or 2 days. In some places, maybe in a few hours, you can get it done. But getting business is where the problem is. So maybe we want to put something like, you know, the several constraints in terms of bidding for businesses in the public sector, even in the private sector. The rigging of some of those processes against smaller companies that are struggling, whether they are qualified or not, you know, usually they are rigged out. Perhaps some sort of affirmative action for small businesses, micro businesses that are just starting on the offer, businesses run by young people who believe that because they haven't been around and gained a lot of goodwill and friendships and network over time, sometimes they start businesses and it doesn't scale because those who are connected are getting all the businesses. So I believe that no matter the problem that one has, and even including the nation, if you can sit and think very, very clearly and honestly about it, you will find a solution. So, but I think the key requirement for that private sector collaboration is part of what the president did yesterday, coming out, honoring the NSG, you know, say, listen, even though it's the first time you're having your meeting since I became president, but I have to create time. And he stayed, you know, he stayed more than an hour in that place, perhaps even more, you know, and gave that very good, inspiring speech. You know, that's part of it. But on the larger scale, Nigeria needs unity. One of the presentation by, I think, one of the ladies, I think the deputy president of the NSG, I said lady, maybe Miriam or Amina, I can't remember her name. Actually, I think Amina, right? Yes, she actually concluded with what she said was probably the most important thing, unity of the country. And so, of course, that takes us to the political realm. And, of course, we're saying that, look, everything must be done to... If everybody is pulling Nigeria in different directions, we're never going to go forward. And the unity is what will assure whether the private sector and the citizens support for the ambitions of government.
Gentlemen, we need to go. 30 seconds we've got. I hope we can do this. The president is quoted to have said, we've achieved the desired objectives for subsidy removal, particularly. I will look in to see, wait a minute. So what was the objective then, Dr. Fashua, about the subsidy removal? Because we know the current situation right now.
Okay, yes. I think the more difficult objective that has been achieved, the more difficult...
which is what? Government's making
policy, no, the more difficult policy is actually the floating of the currency. That is what is playing the yo-yo on the price of crude oil. I felt it was scary, but they've come with some ideas about how to balance. And I think if 10 billion moves into the country today, for example, chances are that the Naira is going to gain value. Who knows, maybe it's going back to 500. Okay. But clearly, in terms of the removal of subsidy, the clear objective is to have a clear line of sight about the finances of the country. So the man wants to know, how much do I have? You can't say NNPC is selling this crude oil, but every time they sell, all the gains are used to finance subsidy. Say, look, remove that. Let me know how much we have in the country. However, I would also challenge us to say that, look, we need to think beyond crude oil. The only assumption on our budget is crude oil and all of that, how much you want to sell. What about the others? What about solid minerals? What about other sectors? We need to plan properly from the ground
So
up.
finally, in terms of your thoughts on that one too, but add to that the current reality about that subsidy removal.
Now, so subsidy or no subsidy is not a problem in the petroleum sector. And we got it even wrong in the PIA deal was passed. Now the PIA Act, Petroleum Industry Act. I was with NNPC senior executives at LBS, came for a program, and we're analyzing one case in the United States. So you can see that the same challenge that we have in the electricity sector, what we have, we've got this, we have GENCOs, we have DISCOs, we have transmission that's not capable to serve, to link the two. Now, in the oil and gas sector, you have refining, which is a very low margin business, not profitable at all. So you need, and then in the United States alone, you have an equivalent of 3 refineries added each year. So they have enormous refining capacity, so that each year they keep bringing down the cost, so that even when you build a refinery in Nigeria, it's going to be cheaper for you to import from the United States.
Until you have that critical mass.
You can never get it, by the way, because they control the technology as well. So what we could have done here is to link production, whatever happens in the upstream, to what happens in the downstream. Okay, the people who have interest in the upstream would have interest in the downstream. So that could have removed the incentive, because what we have is an incentive problem.
Would that be tantamount to IOCs operating refineries here?
That's it. That could have removed it. We have an incentive problem. It's not a subsidy problem.
Yeah, but hasn't that happened? Because what the IOCs were complaining about is the fact that government subsidy was making it difficult for them to invest in that sector.
Well, that's what they would say. But again, if you look at refining, the upstream, so look at the production sharing contract or the joint ventures. So if you see how the revenues, go in which direction, you will see that there are some ways government can give them incentive in the upstream, which they can pass on to the downstream.
All right, Professor Bongo Adi is of Economics and Lagos Business School. He is chairman editorial subcommittee of NES 29. We've also had Dr. Tokwe Fashua, special advisor to the president on economic affairs, office of the vice president. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed today.
Thank you.
We will be back in a moment. We've got another interesting session coming through, so stay on with us. Okay, welcome back. So we've got His Excellency, Ambassador, he's a professor, actually, Martin Homoibi. Pardon me, we missed the H after that B, so we'll sort that out. He's a former Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, former Under-Secretary General for the UN, and former President, UN Human Rights Council. Good morning, Ambassador. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Thank you. It's a privilege to be here with you again this morning.
Good to see you, sir.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so many things playing out in the country here. And then we also keep an eye on how we could be perceived in the Committee of Nations, and many just wondering, how do these things actually interplay? Because I was listening to some analysis that thought, wait a minute, how come at the last hunger, they thought we didn't take pride of place in terms of the time allocated to us to speak? If we're going to speak much later in the evening, some thought that that's just saying, well, and besides, if you don't have as much people in the audience, they think to measure your acceptance or relevance to some extent by several persons, the significance of those who are there when you speak. So how do all of those things play out?
Thank you very much. That's a very pertinent question you are raising. But for me, what marks this last appearance of Nigeria at the United Nations General Assembly was the fact that we spoke on the very first day. That itself was very historic. At what time that speech was delivered is another matter. But I think it was significant that among the first speakers of this particular session of General Assembly, Nigeria appeared on the first day. So I would like us to take note of that for the purpose of history. And that is one of the first times I remember in our history, since 1960, that we began to appear in the General Assembly that such a thing would happen. The rest, of course, is in public knowledge, what transpired. But there is no doubt that one of the challenges that we face, I'm a historian, unapologetically so, one of the challenges we face as diplomats is the kind of narrative that we parade about ourselves. I am not of the school of thought that celebrates negative, apologetic narratives. I prefer a narrative that is affirmative, not pathological. I prefer a narrative that takes note of your challenges and seeks for ways of remedying the situation so that you can do even better. When the founders of the United Nations created the United Nations in 1945, they knew everybody was satisfied with it at the standing of the San Francisco Charter. But yesterday in the classroom, I was teaching postgraduate students what John Foster Dulles, one of those architects of the UN Charter, the statement he made in 1954. He said that the United Nations was created not as a reformatory, but if you are good, it will make you better. But it's not going to make you an angel if you are a devil. So I think we must learn to appreciate our worth in the global community of nations. Rather than talk about what does not exist, we should talk about what exists. And there are a lot of things that exist positively in the history of our country.
Yeah, I get the point, and a very interesting one at that. But we also do know that good exists, evil also exists. And interestingly, you're an academic, also a diplomat, and then you also mingle with politicians. We'll come to that bit much later as you progress. Now, back here, we know the Supreme Court matter is being heard. And you know the hoopla, the build-up to that. And there may yet be more after when the verdict is delivered. And one of the key things that stuck out, still does to a lot of people, is the CSU matter. And so looking at it here, and then probably for those who are watching from the outside, you have their perspectives. So what does that rub off in terms of how we are perceived as a country? And how? What do you think of it?
It really does. There's no pretense about that. It does. Because the person in question is the image of Nigeria, both spiritually and even physically, before God and before all of us. he represents our country. So who he is, what he does, how he smiles, how he poses, how he carries himself, what his records are important for the way that our people and our citizens are looked at this time. So the outcome of that judgment, when it does come out, will be very important. But again, we are Nigerians. Nigeria is bigger than any individual, whoever that person may be. And I think Nigeria is destined for greatness. Nigeria has its own destiny, regardless of whosoever is in place in that country. And that destiny is not stoppable. Actually, those who compete against us in diplomatic field, they know this. And that's why they work so hard. Because, of course, foreign policy or projection, diplomacy is about projection and promotion and defense of national interest. So their national interest and our national interest is what is at stake. So I think that, much as I recognize that the history of nations are not straight line trajectories. No country goes on a straight line and moves until it gets there. So challenges come all the time, and it's part of our life. It's part of the life of nations.
Yeah, but in terms of what we should be doing, not just internally, but externally as well. Because, I mean, when governments change, they adopt different strategies of how to woo international investors, international relations. Do we need it more now, especially considering what we face economically, then this as well, in order to also ensure that we get a place back in the Committee of Nations, in a manner of speaking?
We do. Seriously, we do need foreign investors.
We need more lobbying now, to lobby them.
Of course we do. That is very critical. No nation is an island to itself, even at this time. So we will need, if you consider the state of our economy, I don't think we've ever reached this ebb in the 63 years history of Nigeria. So we are at a very critical stage and a dire need for support globally. But we also must do our part domestically by encouraging people, promoting security, empowering young people, and creating confidence in ourselves. Because I'm so sorry, I feel that because the generations that we have today, sadly, have no sense of the history of our country. We are great people. We have a very proud history. Last time I alluded to the fact that 1493, the Papal Bull of Demarcation, was drawn and the Pope was in charge of the world, literally, at that time. And the world was divided into two. One was given to Spain, the other was given to Portugal. The leaders of those two countries sent envoys to the court of the Oba of Benin. And the Oba of Benin replicated, sent his own envoys to the courts of the kings of Spain and Portugal. Where were these global players that we now talk about today? Where was Britain? Where was the United States? Where were all these other countries today? What happened to us in history? Vasco da Gama came to our continent, Mungo Park discovered the Niger. The history of exploitation, domination, subjugation, and control crept into our history. And we're all, let me, for lack of words, use beneficiaries. I don't want to use a word stronger than that, of that legacy. So I think we must stoop, we must conquer. We must revive the Nigerian spirit. And the Nigerian spirit, as epitomized by the Oyo Empire, as epitomized by the Songhai Empire, as epitomized by Kanem Bonum Empire, as epitomized by Bonum Empire, this must come back to light. And it can only come when you have confidence in yourself, when you know your identity, and you can project and defend your image.
Speaking of Benin, Ambassador, what is it that we hear that you're planning to leave the gown and go into politics? What's going on?
Well, look, let me tell you, one of the tragedies of our country's history is that, well, you can look at the way that we grew up. In my time, when I was growing up, the greatest person in society was a teacher, or a headmaster, or a professor. So some of us who were privileged to have such opportunities aimed to be professors. So I did my GCE O-level in class 4 in the secondary school. I did my A-level in class 5 when some of my mates were doing their O-level. In fact, I wrote the same exam with my teacher, the man who taught me history, because I believed in myself and that there is nothing I cannot do once my mind is fixed to it. Many of our generations today don't see that. You know, the children that we see today, young people today don't see that. They think that somebody must help you. No! You were created in the image and likeness of God. God made you no less than any other human being. You determine whether you get a third class in the university or whether you get a first class. The decision is yours by what you do or what you fail to do. So I think that confidence is critical. And we must sensitize our young people to realize that. Now, for our country, Nigeria, let me tell you this. They won't say it, but everyone is scared of Nigeria because they know the potential that rests in this country. Not because we earned it, but because we are blessed with it. And the problem of Nigeria is that lack of confidence, the diminishing self-confidence that those before us had, which we are no more having because we've sold out more or less to pathological narratives and the wrong reading of our history. We're a great nation, and we must revive that by building confidence in ourselves and doing things correctly, not sentiments. So globally, we must seek collaboration with other parts of the world because no nation now today is an island to itself. We all live in a global village, so we need that. But even look at the resources that are in this country. What are you looking for on earth that you will not find in Nigeria? I doubt if there is any. Look at the looting that is taking place in the mining industry over the years. What has anybody done about it? You talk about uranium in Nigeria. Don't we have uranium in Nigeria? Oil. Everybody's talking scavenging for oil. Oil is the least of the resources that this country is blessed with. Where are our human resources and capital, which is the greatest asset any nation can have? Where Nigerians excel everywhere in the world. When I got to Oxford in 1979, my supervisor told me it would take me 5 years to get my doctorate. I got it in 2.5 years. And I left the next day. Today, those who are in charge of trade in America, the minister in charge of trade in America, or the Secretary of State, the Secretary of State or whatever it is in the UK, are Nigerians, my friend. I saw a clip where the two of them were meeting somewhere. So Nigerians are incredibly talented people. We must live out our past. And it is our duty to do that and not pathologize about Nigeria.
Well, you know, I could sit still and listen to you because I imagine, sitting just right here.
Imagine when that gown missed the town.
No, it hasn't missed the town. The gown is going to town.
Yeah, when it meets
that's what is happening. Yes, meets the town, okay. So what I'm fancying in my head, what I see that could happen maybe in the Edo elections, I don't know if this is going to happen, might be a situation whereby we'll have a Bernie Sanders, in the Edo election where a lot of young people gravitate towards somebody who's much older. You never can tell. I mean, it was very interesting to see how that happens. So people will say, how is that happening, But it's not too far-fetched because
they know what they want.
What young people need is inspiration. Yeah. So for you, I mean, how big an impact would you say this issue of narrative? I think it was Chimamanda who was talking about the single story. How big an impact would you say that this issue of narratives have had on our psyche over a period, and also just how, the level of our production as well, and the kinds of things we've been able to come up. Because some people say, oh, young people are not doing so badly. If you look at the fact, the culture that they're promoting in entertainment, in the film industry, etc., that they seem to have, shed those things, and they've taken the world by storm, all by themselves, of course, helped by their forebears, people like Fela, King Sunny Ade, etc. Mm-hmm. But, they built on that, and they've taken over the world. But in many other areas, it does appear that we're lagging behind. So how is it that, on the one hand, in some areas, we seem to be so confident of who we are, making great impact in one area, but in the other area, we seem to be so far behind. Yeah. Do you have an explanation for that?
Mark, thank you very much. Let me, if you don't mind, let me just conclude the part that I wanted to, in answer to Chamberlain's question. So I went into talking when I talked about academia. Now, you do all that, become special assistant to people perhaps who were not where you were when you were in the university. That's because you chose the other line. And then you are there teaching, but very few people are actually listening to you outside of your classroom. The political class are not listening to you. And then you now turn back and you discover that you are an IDP in your own country.
You've been displaced?
Yes, you've been displaced completely because you've been in the classroom. A lot of things are happening. This morning, the Naira is 1,250 for $1. If you have a child in England or somewhere, what will you be doing? So what I'm talking about is that national development is a collective enterprise. And all of us must get involved. That is why people like us are thinking the way we are thinking. Because you have so much experience, but they're just in the classroom. You need to go to the town and bring this to bear. The network of global relations that you have acquired over the years in diplomacy, deploy it to the field and bring investors with them to turn around the economy of the country. The positions that you have held in the global system that was not given to you because of sentiments, but because of merit and what you have. Bring it to bear on governance. Governance is not rocket science. But in Nigeria, it sounded like a rocket science. It is not. When you have no humility, when you have no desire to learn and to know, and you think that you are everything, and all that matters is your pocket, not the well-being of the citizens who appointed you, that is not leadership. So, the narrative must change. It will change sooner rather than later, whether those who are perpetrating it like it or not. No society is static. Nigeria is an evolutionary society, like all societies in the world, and that narrative will change. Now, to return to the assets of our youths. Nigerians have taken over the entertainment industry globally. We were not in the World Cup that took place in Middle East, in Qatar. We were not there. Our team was not there, that is. But it was Nigerian music that was played, that they were playing.
Our artists were there.
Our artists have taken over the world stage. And those who compete with you in the arts industry didn't want it to happen, but they had no choice. And that is what, because that is not only in the arts that Nigeria will excel. I have a thesis. The global ascendancy of Nigeria is unstoppable. No force can stop it, because spiritually, the Nigerian people have not delinked from their maker, God. And God said, if you give me one righteous man in a nation, I will save that nation. That's why all attempts to bring us to the brinks have never succeeded and will not succeed. One writer, I won't mention his name here, said, this is the only country that they know that dances from the center to the brinks and returns back to the center. Who does that? Nigeria does. Nigeria dances and returns. Because we have not delinked spiritually. So, my word on this is that what we have done in the entertainment industry, what we are doing in the countries of the world, leading countries of the world, in their health industries, in their educational industries, Nigeria is excelling in those places. But I must caution that what is going on at the moment is it's very scary. The Japa syndrome that is pervasive seems to me really like a grand plan to depopulate our countries of the assets that they have invested in and which are capable of revolutionizing it. But again, they cannot be God anyway. So I believe that in spite of that, we have the people, we have the population, we have the skills, and we will stay where we are. The thesis is the global ascendancy of Nigeria is unstoppable. We have to make it work. What we have done in the entertainment industry, what we are doing in other parts of the world, in other countries, that we're not able to do in our countries, we must find now the right way to do it. And the right way to do it is leadership. Leadership. Nemo dat non quam habet. You cannot give what you do not have. If you give a buffoon a position of leadership, I'm sorry, and you're expecting a miracle to happen, it will not happen. If you have a father in the house who doesn't know what to do, what fatherhood means, what will you have? You have a principal in the school who doesn't know the work, academic. What will you have? You can pray 365 days. Actually, God will feel insulted by such prayers. So leadership, I think, is very critical. And all of us have a collective role to play in ensuring that we put our best foot forward. If you don't put your best foot forward, no matter how much you pray, 365 days, 24 hours every day, it will not work.
Well, I know Ayo has a question for you.
Well, thank you, Maokwe. Prof, it's that point of leadership that I was actually going to take you to anyway if you were anywhere else. Leadership. The former Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo, said that there are ways in which some people have been exploiting our fault lines. And we also had a leadership consultant speak to us here and say that those fault lines of culture, particularly of culture, is a big disadvantage to our leadership recruitment system and our leadership culture in the country. Now, it is that culture, that leadership culture, that's been a problem. One of the things that he said was that everything seems central. From before democracy, from before independence, everything in Nigeria's leadership had been centralized in the person of one individual, one religious leader, one traditional leader, and all of that. Do you see that taking us anywhere? How do you think we can manage that leadership cultural deficit in a way that will shore it up and bring back confidence of those who, as you say, are leaving the country to remain? Because trust is completely gone, and it all rises and falls on leadership, don't you think?
I'm not hearing anymore.
Go ahead. If you heard the question, go ahead, sir.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much for that very pertinent question. Yes, leadership is critical. And the narrative has been that element has been missing in the political class. I want you to understand it in that sense. It's really the political elite class. And they're just being exploitative and selfish. And they think that, and it's only when it comes to election they remember where they come from. After that, it's about themselves and their pockets. If I go to Maokwe's village and I go and meet the mama whom I have never met in my life, and I go to her house and I say, Mama, I am from Abuja. I was with your daughter, Maokwe, yesterday. He says I should greet you. How will she respond to me, please? She would, if it is in the night, she will grab me and say, my son, welcome. If there's only one tuber of yam in that house that evening, I am going to be the one to eat that tuber of yam. If there's one bed space, Mama would don't mind sleeping on the floor. She's not going to ask me whether I'm from Jupiter or from Pluto. She doesn't care. If I go to Kano and I meet my classmate there, and I go and meet the mother of my classmate, it's the same thing she will react. You go to my village, Ewato, the center of the universe, you will have the same response. So what I'm saying is that this attitude of exploiting our ethnicity, religion, tribe, whatever, the class will exploit anything that they can use to get power because power is their interest. Not about change, not about doing something really different. So that narrative must change. And it's not typical of Nigeria, let me say. It's almost global. So it takes a mind that is humble, a mind that is truly loving, that understands that leadership is about service and it's about development, and that in the marketplace, there's not going to be, language will not be spoken there about determining the price that I pay for a mudu of gari. It will not matter. Which religion I belong to will not matter. And that if there is banditry in a place, all of us will bear the brunt. So it's good to have good governance.
Well, Prof, on
good governance comes from knowledge, integrity, character, personality.
Yeah. Prof, on that, you've taken a swipe, so to speak, at the leadership, the political class. But we don't have another. We have to still make this system work, as you have said. How do we get people like you, I mean, thankfully, Amichebile asked you that question the other time, to be accepted within these political classes? I contend that if you want to clean a plate, you have to get your hands dirty first. You clean the plate and your hand gets clean. But in the first place, will you even get the opportunity to get into the kitchen and get behind the sink to wash these plates? Because, as you said, things are really dicey now and dire. Confidence is dwindled greatly, but the political class we have is the only one we have. How do we clean up that system to give us good governance?
Let me just be very crude here. In history, power is not given. Power is taken. You're still talking?
No, go ahead, sir.
Okay. In history, power is not given. Power is taken. The so-called political class that have taken power were not sleeping. If they were sleeping, they would not take power. But you, the victim, you are sleeping. And you are complaining, you are lamenting and wailing in your bedroom. What are you doing? You must do something. As I said, America was built by Americans. Britain was built by British people. Who is going to build Nigeria? Nigerians will build Nigeria. And they must build Nigeria. And the earlier they realize that, the better for them. The truth is also this. Without Mandela, there will be no South Africa today that is free from apartheid. Mandela was in jail for 27 years. Kagame, Paul Kagame of Rwanda. It took him to bring Rwanda from -0, I don't know if there's such a mathematical expression, to where Rwanda is today, that our governors will go out there and I don't know what they went there to do, but they consider it a place to go, worthy of going to. So what I'm saying is that talk is cheap. We must all wake up. We must all act. We have no other space given to us by the maker of the world except this country. And it is our collective responsibility to make sure that it works. However that is done, that is not matter for me. But it must be done now that we're in the electoral process through the democratic process. Nobody is going to permit you to enter his kitchen if you don't make effort to get there. You must get there. How you get there is your strategy. And you must have the right strategy.
Well, we'll determine if you can cook much later when you come out of the kitchen with your food. But Ambassador, always a pleasure to have you on. We need this dose time and again, actually. He's a former permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, former Under-Secretary General for the UN, and a former President, UN Human Rights Council. Thank you all the time, sir, for coming on. And we wish you all the best.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Thank you, Markwe. Thank you, my brother on the other side.
Thank you. So let's see some messages that has come through. This is from Law Alpha Cross. It says, to save Nigeria's economy from nosediving, let government at all levels support local industries reasonably to ensure their rapid expansion, productivity, and employment, while adequately taxing imported luxurious goods.
And Olagunju Oladile says, over the years, we've continued to promote economic policies that were conceived in a different era. These policies do not address the economic and social challenges faced today. So every policy seems like a government performing surgery without an aesthetic on us.
Wow. Destiny Austin's tweet is next, and it says, P&ID might be just the tip of the iceberg in contract scams. I urge the federal government to conduct a thorough review of contracts awarded in the last decade. There could be more skeletons in the closet. Transparency is key to a corruption-free future.
And one more here from Dixon Eka says, why do lawyers quote previous judgments of courts when courts of coordinate jurisdiction or even the same court give conflicting judgment on the same matter? The Court of Appeal ruled severally on some election matters, including the presidential election petition, as a pre-election matter and declined jurisdiction. But in the case of Minority Leader of the Senate, the appeal court used pre-election matters to sack him. Which of these judgments will lawyers quote on similar matters going forward?
We'll see if we can find out from those lawyers themselves when they come in. But the thing is, they're always on the same page. They're always on two separate pages with lawyers. That's the thing. So unless it's back to the courts that will still determine what is law at the end of the day. Interesting, isn't it? Well, there you go. That is the show today. But if you didn't take anything away, maybe you should remember that can actually go in there into politics at any level and make an impact, because you can do it. It's not anybody's exclusive preserve. You have what it takes, you can achieve what you want. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain Ossoff. Goodbye.
Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
Have a wonderful and productive day. I'm Ayo Makinde. Bye for now.
Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, and Roku. Channels Television, ubiquitous.
Like drops of rain, individuals and groups innovate, birthing ideas that might make the difference in the conversations and action to fight climate change and the negative impact of man's activities. Innovative thinking from Africa and Europe to save our planet, to light up our cities without tearing apart the ozone, making progress safe and sustainable. On Eco Africa, we highlight the efforts to live and grow sustainably at these times on Channels Television.
Good morning, hello, and welcome to our coverage of the Israel-Hamas war. I'm Olumide Macaulay. Coming up on the program today, 2 more freed Israeli women arrive at Tel Aviv hospital for medical examinations. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says unilateral Middle East moves are unhelpful, and the U.S. has offered no ideas. Plus, Dutch Prime Minister meets Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in Ramallah. All that and more in the course of today's program, but let's begin with the liberation of 2 more hostages by Hamas on Monday, both Israeli women. The group says they were let go on health grounds. The 2 were kidnapped from the kibbutz near Oz, near the Gaza border, along with their husbands, who are still in captivity. Hamas freed them after releasing an American woman and her daughter on Friday. All 4 were seized in the October the 7th cross-border assault in which, according to Israeli figures, Hamas killed 1,400 people. On the Israeli side, the Israeli Prime Minister's office issued a statement confirming that the women, whom it named as Nurit Cooper, 79 years of age, and Yocheved Lifshitz,